infrastructure problem, which is sort of like the critical part of this debate. I think, sorry,
No. Like, I think that it's, I'll take the bank side, I'm going to do this in banking today, but the point of the bank capturing deposits, this goes into fractional reserve banking. Fractional reserve banking is essential to any, to be honest, society. You can say capitalist society, but China's commercial banks do the exact same thing. When you give $1 to a bank, it doesn't make 3.25%. That's what it would have to make if it was stablecoin tied, right? Genius Act must be 93-day date or less, basically starting T-bills or low-value amounts. So that means that you give $1 to a bank and say, this is a stablecoin dollar, and the bank goes, because they don't make 3.25% of the dollar, they make way more than that. There's two ways to do it. One of them is they can invest or lend. That's the principal thing, right? Banks are primarily a deposit-taking institution, and secondarily, they're a debt provisioning institution. Everything else is optional. Treasuries, card issuing, like those are associated with banks, but not inherent to the model. But with fractional reserve banking, under US law, the bank must lend. And if you think about that, they're not allowed to not leverage their deposits. Custodian bank back in the day were actually initially not granted banking license for that reason. It's a fascinating paradigm. Banks are forced to leverage. And that's where you get stress tests, this and that, But ultimately, why do you do it? Because it multiplies capital. And why that's important is that really debt should go to increase productivity. That is what a well-functioning society does. A well-educated population has a great idea, takes a loan from a bank, builds a great business, hires a bunch of people, creates more wealth and employment, and the cycle continues. That's a healthy economy. Now, with fractional reserve banking, if I give $1,000 to a bank, or let's say I go to a bank and say, I want to borrow $1,000. They'll say, okay, you need to put 10% collateral down, for example, and we'll lend you the remaining $1,000. Those $1,000 don't go into their e-wallet, they go to another bank. Now that other bank has, well, in this case, $900, 10% deposit out of the other bank. So of that $900, they can then lend that out with a 10% reserve. Same logic. So now it's $810. $810 goes to yet another bank. It is like a layering, stacking effect. All it means is a multiplier effect. There is way more money in the debt issuance world than there is actually money available. And of course, this is where bank runs and things come from. There's a risk if everyone goes to the bank at the same time and says, give me my money. The bank doesn't have it, they have 10% of it. And that's what a bank run is. But it is also essential that banks can monetize those deposits and make more than 3.25% to be able to sustain their businesses, to be able to deal with losses from bad loans, but still to have the confidence to provision a new startup founder or business owner and say, yes, I will give you money. This is the risk, right? And we'll cover that in a second in more depth, but the traditional model of banking and deposit tokens fit very nicely into existing regulatory frameworks, means that $1 tied to a deposit token, that bank can still do whatever it wants with it. It can put it into corporate bonds, it can lend it on a credit card, it can do more traditional debt provisioning. It's not tied to 93-day dated treasuries, basically. So that's why deposit tokens from a bank fit into their existing architecture, the existing regulatory structure, and align very closely with what incentivizes banks to do their core functions there, take deposits and lend them.
Excellent.
Stablecoins.
Sorry?
You could skip the stablecoins.